Welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika Casupanan, the first Canadian to win Survivor. But before that, I was a Filipino immigrant and corporate perfectionist who felt doubted and overlooked. Now I'm here to prove that every journey, whether messy, beautiful, or unexpected, is worth celebrating. Every Monday, I bring you candid conversations and relatable pep talks with guests who've defied expectations. If you're ready to feel seen, celebrated, and empowered, you're in the right place. And here, I'm always happy to see you. I bet everyone listening to this podcast has had a big win. Maybe it was getting a promotion or landing a leadership position. Maybe it was getting invited to speak or present in front of an important audience. Maybe you graduated from a program you're really proud of, or you completed a creative project, or a social media post did really well. Whatever that win was, congratulations, I know you earned it. Now, after your win, did your mind start to wander to thoughts like, was it just luck? What if people realize I'm not as smart as they think I am? What if people realize I'm not as good as they think I am? What if people figure out that I don't deserve to be here? If you've thought any of these things, you are not alone. Trust me, I've had my days too. And that's why this week I am breaking down a sneaky little thing called Imposter Syndrome, aka the feeling that you're not capable or qualified despite having so much evidence of your success. And I'm talking about it with 3 times certified life coach, Coach Carey. But first, I love to start each episode by talking about something I was happy to see this week. And this week, I got to go back and give advice to my younger self. Well, kind of. I was invited to go back to my alma mater, Western University, and talk to current students about their strengths. Basically, this event was about helping people to figure out their individual strengths and how they can use those strengths to set themselves up for success in a way that works for them. Being on campus again, quite literally and figuratively, brought me back to my undergrad days. Don't get me wrong, I loved my undergrad days. I had so much fun. But I was also so insecure at that time. I felt like I didn't have as much money as the other students around me. I felt like I didn't have as much opportunity as everybody around me. And I wasn't sure how I was supposed to stack up. Until years later, when I proved to myself time and time again that it was possible for me to make my dreams come true, that I realized that what I had in my individual strengths were enough. And it was so rewarding to go back to campus and speak to current students and to tell them, yes, I know there's uncertainty. Yes, I know that there are moments of insecurity. And I can promise you that the strengths that you have are enough for you to find the success that you want. And being able to do that and being able to talk to the students after, it was so healing for me. So thank you, Western, for inviting me back. And before this event, I actually got to do a personality test to tell me my top strengths. And my number 1 strength is positivity. Let me know, do you think that tracks? I mean, my podcast is called Happy to See Me, so I don't think it's a big surprise. Also, when I was there, one of the students asked me for advice on how to overcome imposter syndrome. And because of that, I'm so excited to share this week's episode with Coach Carey. Coach Carey is a 3 times certified life coach and motivational speaker who is passionate about helping people to tap into the confidence they never knew they had. In this episode, we talk about what imposter syndrome actually is, the different types of imposter syndrome, and Coach Carey gives us tangible tools on how to overcome your self-doubt today. So if you know somebody who has struggled with imposter syndrome, make sure you share this episode with them. So why don't we just get into it? Here is my interview with Coach Carey. I hope you enjoy it. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a while.
Really?
I love following you.
Oh my God, stop.
You're so inspirational.
Well, me?
Have you always been like that?
You know, in my heart of hearts, I want to say yes, but I'm also like, I'm just a kid figuring it out.
Aren't we all?
Exactly.
I honestly think that when I was a kid, I'd look at adults and think, that is an adult that has a life together. And then now I'm in my 30s. You don't have to say how old you are if you don't want to say.
38.
You're 38.
Coming
okay.
in hot.
I'm 35. So around the same age.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm a kid.
Yeah. Still figuring it out. It's like, you know those moments where you're like, we need an adult. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm the adult. It's low-key so scary.
I know. Yeah. Like at Christmas when I'm like watching the kids, oh my God, wait. I am the adult in case something happens. I'm the one who has to know what to do.
Yeah, like they put me at the adult table and I was like, I don't want to be here.
No.
Put me back at the kids table. Way more fun.
Exactly. And also I want to tell any of my family members with children that You can still feel safe leaving your children in my care, okay?
Yeah, that too.
Okay, well, this podcast, I love to put the spotlight on people who have felt overlooked or underestimated.
I love that.
So I want to know, have you ever felt underestimated? And if you have, can you describe a moment when you felt underestimated?
That's a great question, and I love that you're doing that. I think it's a great way to also remind people of their power and who they are. So, I've been underestimated a lot throughout my life, but I would say, one of the most pivotal and impactful times was probably in about grade 10. A bit of a chatty Cathy, in class. And I was always a kid. I'm more of an auditory learner. So once I hear it, I absorb it, and then kinesthetic in terms of teaching someone else, like skills practice. Then I have it forever. But in high school, it's not always easy to figure out what learning style works for you and or teachers knowing that, especially back then. I have ADHD, I'm neurodiverse, so my teachers constantly were underestimating me because it seemed like they just thought I was a failure because I wasn't getting good grades and I was talking a lot in class. But there was one teacher that just was willing to help. And often after school, she would help me. Like, I would have a million ideas and she'd be like, okay, let's work on the outline for the essay. Because I had a hard time getting all the ideas onto one piece of paper. So she would sit with me and be like, okay, what's your objective? Let's break that down. What are the top 3 points? Then from the outline, I could go crush that essay and get like 90s. So being underestimated, and they, wanted me to go on Ritalin and all these things, which I did for like 3 months, but I didn't feel like myself. I felt like I didn't have access to my emotions, if that makes sense. So then I was like, I don't want to go on that anymore. And then that also inspired me to just work differently and start to self-advocate more. So I started to say, can I listen to classical music during exams? Because that helps me focus. Or if I get distracted, I get anxious, and then I forget. Can I give a presentation instead of writing an essay? And so I went from being, underestimated and failing to most improved student award, scholarship to every university I applied to. So that was really the beginning of understanding my brain works differently, and that's okay because I can still thrive when the right people believe in me and I believe in myself.
Wow. It's wild to see how things can change when you have the one person who helps you to look at things different and 100%. To reframe all of these things that you thought were quote unquote wrong with you.
Yeah. And she saw me differently. Instead of saying, oh, this is a troublemaker or the kid who's not good, it was maybe this kid just needs a little extra time.
I love that because on Happy to See Me, we should be happy to see ourselves with all of the traits, right? The ones 100%. That people always praised us for, the ones that people made us feel bad about when we realized that they were actually just gifts that the people around us didn't know how to see.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So that was like a really eye-opening moment for me as well, because then instead of, it being something that someone could easily go into shame about in terms of their learning or ADHD, things like that, it was more like, okay, I know how to work with this now. And now I call it my superpower. Absolutely.
So after this experience, is this what propelled you to start building confidence in other people? How did that journey look?
Yeah, I think that was the beginning of me. I think the beginning was really in grade 4. That's because I switched schools a lot. I was bullied a lot. And I just decided to introduce myself to every single kid, learn their name and something about them. And then I started to see, okay, people treat you differently. And that is the feeling that I wanted, because I didn't want to make people feel how I had felt, being bullied. And so then I carried that with me everywhere I went. And so by the time I got to grade 10, it was very much like, okay, confident in myself. And how can I help others? But I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time. It just was happening. Then that just was like connecting all the dots throughout my life. And I majored in psychology in university in Montreal. And I really was passionate about understanding cognitively why people do the things they do. And that was a way for me to better understand myself, the people around me, my parents. And then that's when things really started to shift to, okay, so here's what I'm doing to help myself and to learn and grow. But then now I have the tools and sort of the method to the madness to help others.
Isn't it incredible that as a kid, you figured out that the way that you respond and the way that you behave around other people actually changes the way that they treat you? And you had all these ideas about these people are probably judging me because I'm new and I'm different. And you're like, wait, if I am open with them and if I greet them, they're actually going to treat me different.
100%.
Do you feel like a lot of people actually are the ones underestimating themselves?
I do, very much so. And I think that's, one of the reasons why I like coaching about confidence, because I've realized that it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from or how you identify. Every single person is experiencing ups and downs with confidence, from the billionaire to the CEO to the parent to the teacher to the student, everybody, myself included. And people ask me, how are you so confident? And I'm like, it takes work every single day. It's not just poof, wow, I'm so confident every moment of every day. No, it just takes work. And you just keep at it, just like anything else. It sounds cliche, but consistency is key.
Yes. Yeah, it's not like a trait, right?
Yeah, no.
I feel like that's something that I get too. I've had people say, oh my gosh, you seem so confident. I'm like, it's not like I'm just born like, poof, I think I'm capable.
Yeah.
But it's every day I am talking to myself.
It's like you came out of the womb and I was like, you will be confident.
Exactly. I would guess that a lot of confident people still have that negative track in their head.
Sure.
Is that something that you come across when you're coaching?
All the time. Every single person. And I think everybody has it. It's just, what do you do with it? So rather than it being in control, you invite it in. Grab a seat at the table. How can I support you? That's what I did with my ADHD through my own journey of confidence. It's okay, yeah. Some days it's not going to feel great, but am I going to talk poorly about myself or to myself or make jokes about myself in front of others? No. Instead, I'm going to say, okay, these are some things I can work on. And then continue to be rooted in who I am and how I treat myself and how I treat others. And that really plays a role in people's confidence. There's a lot of things that people can do to work on, improve, and build their confidence I don't think they realize are pillars of confidence.
What are the pillars of confidence? This is a new one for me. I'm ready for this.
Oh, so happy you asked. There's a few, but I would say like 3 that I would always come back to is number 1, joy. People don't realize like there is a difference between joy and happiness. Happiness you can find in like anything, whereas joy you can really only give to like yourself. And I always compare that to hobbies. You know, when you're a kid, it's like anybody's team winning soccer at 5 years old, but you're doing it because it brings you joy. Even if you're in grade 5 or 8 or 10, it's the things that you just do for you. And so that refuels your energy and kind of gives you that outlet to move through emotion and energy and refuel your own energetic system. So that's a big pillar for confidence. I would say number 2 is language. I feel like I talk about that a lot because it's something that I feel like everyone has access to. You have self-talk. Every human has self-talk, right? So that's something we can all work on, but people don't realize that what you say in here will play a role in how you show up out there. So my example I always use is, you know, if you have a deliverable or something big due tomorrow and you forgot about it, someone might go, wow, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I forgot. I'm a failure. And in that moment, in their conscious mind, they think they're joking. But in their subconscious mind, they don't know because it can't tell the difference. Your subconscious mind is not equipped to know the difference. So now you're just hindering yourself by the language you're using when we could just shift it. And sometimes that could even be a small shift, like going to the gym sometimes. I'm like, ugh. But instead of saying I have to, I'll say I get to. Huge shift just in that, right? And I remind myself that I'm in an able body where I'm able to do that. Wow, I should be grateful for that. So I would say language. And then number 3 that I feel like is like such a shock to people when I talk about this a lot, but it's boundaries. And most people don't realize that boundaries is going to help you build and increase and maintain your inner confidence because, you know, often, especially for people who are maybe a little bit more intuitive or emotionally connected, they don't actually honor the boundaries they implement. You know, so it's like, I don't like when this person does it and they keep doing it and you kind of allow it. That's what that means. So you've made a boundary here, but you're not actually acting on it out there. But when you actually do, so you say, I don't like when this person does it. I've given them a warning. I've told them how it feels. Now this person is no longer close to me because they couldn't honor my boundary. That's a way to honor a boundary. What you build is self-trust. And the more you trust yourself, the more decisive you are, the more you are willing to trust your ideas, your thoughts, to share, to show up in the world. So I would say those are my top 3 that people don't typically think of.
Wow. I love that you have laid out confidence so simply. Can I ask a question about boundaries?
Of course, yeah.
What is the difference between setting a boundary and being avoidant?
Oh, Jesus. How much time do we have?
Because truthfully, sometimes I'm like, I think I'm setting boundaries, but then in my head, I'm always going through everything in my head. And one of the things I go through is, am I setting a boundary or am I just avoiding the situation?
Yeah. And so that's exactly it. I feel like a lot of people will set a boundary in their mind, but not actually verbalize it and act on it. So you have to put it in action or else it's not really happening. So that might look like, I really don't like being in the same space as this person because they don't respect my pronouns, as an example. So the boundary now has been made in your head. Now, putting it in action is saying, hey, I know we're all learning, no problem, but I just wanted to let you know that my pronouns are whatever. So now you've put it in action. And then, no one's perfect. So let's say the person slips up but then corrects themselves. Okay, that means they're trying. Let's say they slipped up and don't correct themselves. So now that's them not honoring your boundary. And depending on the person, they might give them one more try, one more chance, or not. And so then it would be like, okay, since you're unable to respect my boundaries, like, I just need some space from this friendship. Rather than the avoidant would be like, I'm just going to slowly stop talking to this person. This person wants to hang out. I'm just going to say, can't. Which still works, but it doesn't actually get to the root because you haven't voiced and advocated.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, every human wants to self-advocate, whether they are aware of it or not.
Yeah. So boundaries require you to clearly and proactively communicate how you're feeling and what you need.
Yeah.
Okay. I know a lot of people are probably thinking, but that's scary.
Yeah.
Coach Carey, what do I do? That's scary to say out loud.
Yep. It is scary, but that's part of growth, right? Everything that's on the other side is going to be a little bit scary because we don't know. But how many times have we been in those situations and we're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Right? And it feels scary because sometimes we're also scared of losing that person or it potentially turning into confrontation or something a little bit more intense. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that allows you to put yourself in control of who's in your life.
Yeah.
And then that'll consistently feel amazing rather than more often than not like rocky roads of avoidant boundaries, not feeling good. Because being avoidant actually doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
In the moment, you're like, great.
Yeah.
But after a while, you're like, oh, I don't like this.
Yeah.
So
does it even feel good, or is it just you're avoiding something that feels bad, right?
yeah, at first it feels good because you're like, oh, well, this person isn't in my life, or I'm not having to deal with that. But then after a while, you're like, no, because I didn't explain to them why. And then you didn't give them a chance.
Yeah.
And then that person might continue to reach out and continue to reach out. And why aren't you talking to me? Why are you mad at me? Why are you upset? You haven't communicated. And now that's on you.
And I think that's the big thing, right? Because when you're avoidant, then there's disconnection. But if you have the conversation, it's scary. You don't know how people are going to respond. But that's the only route where there's the potential for more connection.
Exactly.
Boundaries so you take the risk.
Allowing you to bring people in, giving them the roadmap about how you need to be treated, loved, respected, etc. So it actually is teaching people how to be in your life rather than pushing people out. I think it's misconception.
Ooh, that is deep and scary. Hearing you say that is very scary, but I also think it's something that I'm going to take to heart, that I think a lot of people listening to are going to take to heart.
I hope so. Because it's like, for me, it's always been about the tiny shifts. It doesn't have to be the things that are going to shake the world tomorrow. But if we can do small things consistently towards what we want for ourselves or the life we want for ourselves, things can be better. And I think that is part of growth and life.
It's all baby steps, isn't it?
Baby steps, yeah. Digestible, bite-sized pieces.
Yes. Okay, there's another area where I know you have expertise, and I imagine everybody listening has experienced this. I know I have. I'm experiencing it right now. But I want to talk to you about imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome?
Okay, so yes, a topic I love to speak about because, I recognize that it was coming up a lot in my one-on-one sessions. And then I did a post about it a couple of years ago, and it went and people were like, what is this? It's happening to me. And I was like, oh, I guess a lot of people don't know what it is. So the actual definition is really a psychological pattern where someone doubts their achievements, basically. So everybody has it. There's not a single person on this earth that hasn't experienced it in some way. However, it's not actually a syndrome, and it's not actually a mental health area where someone would need medication for. To this day, right now, no one in this world is on medication for imposter syndrome. But it's essentially your self-talk getting the best of you. That's why I always come back to language, being the number one thing to help you with your confidence. It's the same thing for imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome might look like someone saying, I don't think I can get this job, and now I don't apply to the job. Simple. But a way you can combat that with your language, or I like to call it, show me the receipts. So remind yourself of the times you've done something that kind of scared you or that you didn't think you were qualified for before in the past. We've all done it, whether it was applying for a job or hosting a show or a podcast, sharing content about something you may not be an expert in, but it's meant something to you. We've all done it in some way. And then slowly but surely that reprograms your brain to not discredit that work. So the more you show the receipts, the more you remind yourself that you can do it. And then because your subconscious is only an output function, so it's talking, that negative self-talk is not really set up for rebuttals. So if you say, hey, self-talk, I actually know I can do this, it's not really going to say anything else.
So that makes me feel a lot better because I feel like I'm even having imposter syndrome right now. So something
right in this moment,
something I have imposter syndrome about, believe it or not, is being a podcaster. Even though I'm sitting here in the studio, we're talking. This show has been on for 3 seasons now. It's in the middle of its 3rd season. It's won awards. I have all the receipts, but every now and then I'm thinking, oh, but there are other people who are actually podcasters, and I'm still trying.
How often do you revisit those receipts?
Not as much as I should. Then the next track that my mind goes on is, okay, but I have all the receipts and then I still think these things about myself. I don't like that I've been so hard on myself. How does somebody have more self-compassion for themselves when they are ignoring the receipts and thinking these negative things?
Yeah, for sure. I think self-compassion is something that everyone could benefit from having more. And it's not just going to be your receipts. I think for self-compassion, it's genuinely sitting with your thoughts and shifting that language instead of being like, when you recognize you're hard on yourself, be like, okay, where's this coming from? And then unpacking yourself, okay, I'm being hard on myself because, and if you get to the why, and for the why for you, I'm going to almost assume that it's because you're passionate about what you do and you hope that this work will help one person. So when you think about that why, isn't that admirable, right? So then if we shift from I'm being hard on myself because I care a lot about what I do, that's empowering now.
Yeah.
Right? And
I like that.
You're right. So it's just a shift. And then you can go back and look at the receipts, and now the receipts are pouring into the bucket about, wow, this is helping people. And if we remove the idea that it needs to go viral and thousands of people, because at the end of the day, if we help one person, that's still one person. And if we can get to that, so then you go back to your why. So on those days where you're feeling like, I'm being hard on myself, go back to your why. I'm doing this to help somebody. Someone might need to hear this conversation. And then when you get to that, the self-compassion from there can really look like, okay, what do I need? Where can I slow down? Where can I nourish more? And then you just pour back into you. Because when you're, I always say, people say we pour from a full cup. I'm like, that's actually a myth. You pour from your overflow. The full cup is everything you need for you.
Oh, my brain.
Whoa,
okay. That's true, because if you pour from the full cup, you don't have anything left over. Or you cut off what you have left over for yourself.
And then you're just constantly in this chase to get back to full. And then every day you're empty, full, empty, full. Rat race.
Wow.
But if you, I'm full. And what I do, I love what I do, then you're just pouring.
Yeah, wow. See, I had a moment last night. Maybe this was a joy versus happiness moment because I had a long day. So, was on the phone in the morning, spent the full day at the podcast studio, got home, knew that for the rest of the evening, I was going to be working. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go get takeout, sit on my couch. I know everybody's having fun tonight, but I'm just going to sit on my couch and I'm going to do work.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking, oh my gosh, I have been working for myself for the last few years. Finally, I've reached the point where my days are full of projects that I love. And there's projects and things coming up that I'm so excited about. I get to work with people I love. I get to talk to you. And this is part of my job. And I'm like, wow, even though I'm so tired and I wish I could be sitting in front of the TV, that's really cool that I get to do all of these things that I think are wonderful and impactful.
Yeah.
So is that a joy moment for me? Not necessarily a happy moment.
That almost sounds a bit more like tapping into your why and your purpose. But maybe it just sounds like there's a little less balance because there's going to be those days where it's nonstop.
Yeah.
But then can you block out a half day on a Friday? And then maybe you crush a little bit on Saturday. So that way you have that balance. That's personally what I do for me. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, nonstop, no breaks.
Yeah.
No problem though, because I'll give myself a half day on Monday, a half day on Friday, and I'll work a half day Saturday. But then that way, at least it's dispersed and I get to nourish and pour back into me.
Yeah.
That is the game changer because I need to be at my overflow, especially for the work that I do, helping people. Imagine if I showed up and I was like, got nothing. Sorry, this podcast recording is going to be me saying nada.
Yeah.
That'd be terrible.
I know. That's like something that I've been trying to work on. I think that I've always been someone who's done many things. And then now when you work for yourself, you really have to always be moving. Or there's this perception you always have to be moving in order for things to happen. So I've started to implement a few boundaries. One is I will only wear makeup on a fixed number of days a week. Because for me, when I wear makeup, that means I'm on camera, I'm doing something. So some days are my makeup days and some days gremlin. Yeah. And I think that that's helped me a lot.
And also like letting your skin breathe.
Yeah, truly.
Right? I love it. Okay, so now that I'm hearing you speak a little bit more and we talked about imposter syndrome a tiny bit, I'm just going to quickly go back to it because it was studied as a blanket term up until about the 1960s. And then a woman doctor named Dr. Valerie Young, she studied it a little bit differently. She broke it down into 5 categories of how someone could see themselves reflected more in imposter syndrome to help it make a little bit more sense. And there's 5, and I feel like the one that you're showing up as the most is called the soloist.
Oh, I'm scared already. What does
because
this mean?
Based off that one word, it resonated, no?
Yeah, I'm scared, but tell me.
So the soloist gets their value from doing things on their own and autonomy.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
And then the asking for help is a little bit difficult. So it's not a bad thing. But you can see when it's out of balance, that's when it starts to no longer serve you. And then that's when you dip into those swirlies, I call them. Yeah. The thoughts that aren't serving you.
I just want everyone listening to know that as you were describing that to me, I felt my whole body contract. So you've got me. You've nailed me. I'm scared.
Yeah. See, and I'm a bit more of like the superhuman, where I feel like I thrive off doing it on my own. But again, then it's out of balance, and I refuse to delegate, and then that starts to hinder me. And my team's like, "Hi, we're here to help. This is what we're here for." And I'll be like, "Oh yeah," and then I feel amazing. So we all have it in some way. It's just, how do we use it?
Can you talk about some of the other ones? Because I'm curious. I don't think that imposter syndrome affects certain types of people more than others. It just sounds like everybody experiences it in a different way.
For sure. Yeah. So there's the soloist, the superhuman, the natural genius, and I can't remember the other 2 off the top of my head, but the one that I love to speak about too is the natural genius, because that wasn't me. I don't know if that was you as a kid.
I don't think
Not
so.
me. Not me.
No, we worked hard.
Right? So those people, things came a little bit easier to them. For example, like they were like, "Oh, I picked that equation up quickly," or "I understood that concept quickly." Great, love that for you. But then that becomes part of their identity, because their whole lives, everyone sees them as someone who can understand things quickly. And now to them, they're like, "Oh, I get things easy. It's not going to be a problem for me." And then they get into a situation where it's like, "Oh my God, I don't understand." And now it becomes like an internal battle, because they start wondering, who am I if I'm not a natural genius? So that's how that one impacts other people.
So that reminds me of people who did well in high school without trying that hard, and then going to university and then thinking, "Oh, wow, this is actual school and this is hard."
Exactly. Those people don't know. It's not me. Jealous.
Why is imposter syndrome so common now?
That's probably the one question. I don't really know. I think that there's just so many things happening externally. I think the rise of social media and the consistency of how people are using it, ultimately everyone, whether consciously or subconsciously, they're comparing themselves.
Yes.
Even the successful people are comparing themselves. They're like, "Oh, why am I traveling?" Or "Why is this person getting this brand deal?" Or whatever it might be. So I think, to me personally, that feels like why it's become a little bit more consistent, across the board for anyone and everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's so in our faces, right?
24/7.
And I think that once you reach this certain level, you dream about getting somewhere. Let's say you probably really wanted to get your business to a certain spot. You got it there. I always wanted to win Survivor. I got there. But then you get there and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, but there's somebody who's another rung higher on the ladder or higher and higher." Yeah. How do you stop yourself from constantly looking up like that?
Yeah, I think it's tricky, because that is still a form of motivation. So it's not a bad thing. I am always like, what can we do to keep things in balance? So if there is a moment, because that is a comparison, but instead of it being a negative comparison, now we can shift it to aspire. Like, oh, okay, so that person is somewhere that I might want to be. I love that. Let me book a coffee chat with them. Whenever they post something, let me send love, so that you're now sending a positive frequency to yourself and to that person rather than a negative one. And so then that's actually going to empower you rather than hinder you. So when I see someone who has a brand deal that I would dream of, instead of being like, oh, I wish. Instead, I'm like, congrats, sending lots of love. I'm so excited for you. Great job. I don't know if that's going to help. Like, that's not going to help me get the brand deal, but it's going to remind me to stay focused.
Yeah.
Stay on my lane. And what's meant for me will always be for me. And that person might reach out and be like, hey, thank you so much for the support. They're looking for other people to work with. I'd love to put you forward. 9 out of 10 times that happens.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I always think if you move forward with positivity, that's when you make room for things to come in, right? And there's no harm in reaching out to someone saying, that was cool, or I loved the work that you did.
Yeah, you never know. My grandmother would always say you catch more with honey than vinegar.
Oh, I love that.
And it's true, right?
I always love to now reach out to people who I admire, even if I think they will never read it.
Totally,
I'm
yeah.
like, always, you never know. And I think even for me, whenever I get a message from somebody saying, I really got something out of the podcast this week, I'm like, thank God. I'm like, thank you. This
the
means
soloist
so much.
in you is just like, oh.
I feel too seen. I'm too scared talking to you. But it's good. It's good. But it's like,
You're not
happy
the
to see
first
me. You are
person to say
seeing
that,
me.
yeah.
And
And I bet how many times have you reached out to someone you admire and they've responded?
a couple times.
Right?
And I'm like, oh. Or I've reached out to somebody and they would respond like, oh yeah, I loved you on Survivor. And I'm like, wait, this person who in my mind seemed like this unattainable, faraway person knows who I am. That's weird.
Keyword, in my mind.
That's true. So what are the tools that people need to combat imposter syndrome?
Yeah. I've got 3 of them. Number 1, language. So we already talked about that, being mindful of your language, shifting your language, just making sure that you understand that the subconscious can't differentiate the difference. So no matter the environment or space, or even if you're at home, be mindful of how you're talking to yourself. So 1.5 is affirmations. People might think it's kind of like people are doing it on Instagram, but there's actually science to it. The more you say it, the more you feel it, the more you believe it. So even if someone says, I am strong, I am proud, at first it might kind of be like, huh. But after a while, now that's embedding into your subconscious. And wouldn't we rather embed that instead of I'm stupid?
Yes.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Right? And that's what'll start happening while you're sleeping. The brain never sleeps, but you do. So that's, going to give you a bit more of that foundation. Number 2 is the receipts. So really reminding yourself of the times you've done it before, because you've done stuff in your life. I always say, when I'm in a big room, like if you're in this room right now, it means you've overcome something. Every single person has. You have, I have, team over here has, the big desk over there.
Michael behind the desk.
Yeah, right? Everybody has. And then number 3 is reframing. So taking that language one step further. So instead of saying, I'm not qualified for this job, I don't think I can do it, you shift to, even if I'm not qualified, I can learn the tools I need to get the job. So one's going to empower you versus hindering you. And those are my top 3 tools, no matter where you fall on the spectrum in terms of the different types of imposter syndrome. And we can share that with everyone too, with the 5 types.
I like that. I like that because it doesn't stop you, right?
No.
All of these tools that you're adding really are about opening up more pathways, more growth.
That's it. And accessible. Right?
Yes.
Like every single person, tomorrow you could implement one of those. Today, even.
I mean, I love a receipt.
I love a receipt.
I love a receipt. So I live alone for the first time in my life.
Cool.
And one of my favorite things to do, I used to do it as a joke, but then now I do it seriously, is when I do my makeup, then I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, you look amazing.
Yes.
And I used to say it to myself as a joke, but now I'm like, oh, okay, amazing, look good. Okay, let's go.
Boom. I would say take that one step further and write it in makeup or something on the mirror. So even on the days when you're not wearing makeup, it's also reinforced.
True. My non-makeup days.
Right?
My gremlin days. That's a good idea.
Even that language. Why gremlin?
Oh my gosh. I'm scared. I'm scared.
Cut the show. Cut the
done.
cameras.
The show's done. I'm asking you one more question, then we're getting out of here.
But I'm just saying, maybe shift it, right? Because if we pull up what a gremlin looks like,
yeah.
that's
Well,
not
they're kind of cute.
She said kinda. All right.
I think they're
I study language too much.
I know. But I feel like they're cute and like it's like one step away from an Ewok on Star Wars, you know?
Fair. But does
They're,
that
like, cute
does that
and-
represent how you feel on your makeup days, truly?
Maybe. Well, okay, but I feel like I talk about gremlins with a bit of affection.
Okay.
But really, I should be talking about them like, oh my God, they're the most adorable, stunning things ever.
Right. Then
I'm
as long
scared.
as it's an empowering version.
Yeah.
And if not, then maybe I would encourage you to shift that word.
Yeah. Okay. The gremlin days are gone.
You're like, I did not sign up for this.
I know. I was here trying to help the viewers, and now here I am sweating.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I should be challenged too.
It's just what I do.
Okay, well, do you have final advice for somebody who might be underestimating themselves right now?
Good question. I would say a few things. I would say I like to have like a success jar. You can call it whatever you want, but or a box, whatever, but something where you write down your wins and actually physically write it down and then put it somewhere. So on those days, you can go back and read it. And it might sound silly at first, but there's been times where I'm sure you've crushed tons of podcasts and you're like, it didn't exactly hit me in the way that I was hoping it would. Like, like you said, after Survivor winning, you're like, okay, but kind of what's next, But yet there's people around the world who are like, oh my goodness, you won. So those are the reminders we need, but we actually need it like almost a little bit more tangible. Just being like, yeah, I'll think about it in my room when I think. No. It's kind of like when you make a plan with someone and you don't put it in your calendar. Is it going to happen? Unlikely.
Definitely not.
Right? If it's not in my calendar, it's not happening.
No.
So similar to the reminder. Like that's why I call it a success jar. So being able to pull it out, actually read it, get you to connect back to that moment, which brings more visionary for anyone who might be more of a visual learner, et cetera. It puts you back in that moment. Very much like how music can help someone with dementia. It immediately puts you back in that space. So I would say that's number one. Number two, being mindful of your language for sure. I never cannot talk about this enough because it's accessible. It's in your own head. You don't have to go anywhere else for it. And then number three is, challenge yourself in thinking, why am I underestimating myself? And so you could ask yourself questions like, where is this coming from? Have I felt this way before? And when I moved through it in the past, what helped me? Because I always say the past leaves clues. So maybe you didn't feel great in grade 12. Okay, what did you do? And that's going to bring you clues to what might help you now. And I might need to evolve because you've evolved. But I would say those are three pillars. And then maybe the last one I would say is really doing something outside of your normal that just fires you up. And that's why I bring it back to joy. I love swimming. But no one needs to really know that I swim. I post about it sometimes, but it's really just something I do for me. I'm weightless. I love being underwater. I'm just like a water baby. Like I just love the water. So on those tough days after swimming, I'm like, whew, closed all those tabs in my head. Mm-hmm. Maybe any anxiety or frustration or angst from the day is just subsided. And so the reason I bring this up is because I know it works for me, but also, one of my clients who, CEO, female in a tech world, so you can only imagine some of the things she might be up against.
Yes.
And she said to me, and I have consent to share this, but she said, I have 2 young daughters, and at the end of the day, I have 0 energy. So her daughters at the time were like 4 and 3. So, mom, you're home? Ah! She was annoyed. Just go sit down. I can't talk right now. But then she had guilt. So then I asked her, what's something that brings you joy? And we sat in silence for 10 minutes. It's not my job to tell people what to do. My job as a coach is to ask the right questions to bring it out of you. And so after 10 minutes, she said, painting. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. When's the last time you painted? And she was like, 10 years ago.
Wow.
Audible gasp. 10 years. If that's something that could help make you feel better. So now, after a tough day, she'll carve out half an hour to paint before her daughters come home. And now when they come home, she's able to pour from her overflow. So that would be the last thing I would say to anyone who might be underestimating yourself. You've got to set yourself up for success within yourself. And then that's going to play a role in how you show up in the world.
You've given me and everybody listening so much to think about. Truly, I know that I've screamed and I've shrieked a lot during this call. Everyone, if you're just listening, you have to watch the YouTube version so you can see me totally sweating. But this was amazing. Honestly, you've given me so much insight to think about.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's challenged me in really good ways. Coach Carey, if people want to keep up with you and figure out what you're doing, can you share where they can do all of that?
So I would say probably Instagram is one I'm most active on. So that's coach.carey. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok, but I would say Instagram's number one. Or you can go to my website, careycoach.com. Carey. And that's where you can download any of my resources or see any of my tools and then book me for keynotes and workshops.
We love it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure. Lots of love, everybody. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Coach Carey, for sharing all of your expertise with us. If you know someone who is struggling with imposter syndrome, make sure you share this episode with them. I would love, love, love if you could subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps new people to find the show. And of course, the podcast is on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It's at Happy to See Me Pod. I am so grateful that you spent a bit of time with me this week, and I will be happy to see you next Monday.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Sonar Network.